The question came so quietly that Rowan almost missed it. They were sitting beneath the bright afternoon sky in the crowded stadium, surrounded by thousands of cheering people, yet for one strange second, everything seemed to go silent. Beside him, Maren turned toward him with a nervous smile and whispered, "Are you ever going to kiss me?" Rowan froze, not because he didn't want to, but because he suddenly realized how much that one moment meant. For months, they had hidden their feelings behind jokes, teasing glances, accidental smiles, and excuses to spend time together. But now, beneath the clear daylight, there was nowhere left for either of them to hide. If you believe that kindness, patience, and second chances can change someone's life, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness becomes the beginning of something unforgettable. Rowan had first met Maren 8 months earlier at a small community bookstore where they both volunteered on weekends. She had been carrying a stack of books that was far too tall for her to see over, and when the books suddenly slipped from her arms, Rowan had instinctively caught half of them before they hit the floor. Maren laughed, thanked him, and joked that he had just saved the lives of several innocent novels. Rowan laughed too, and neither of them realized that a simple moment like that would become the beginning of a friendship that slowly grew into something neither was brave enough to name. After that day, they seemed to find reasons to be around each other. Rowan would arrive early for volunteer shifts, pretending he enjoyed organizing shelves. Maren would somehow choose the exact same section to work in. She teased him about his terrible taste in coffee, and he teased her about always buying books she already owned. Their conversations stretched longer every weekend. Sometimes they talked about music, sometimes about their families, sometimes about dreams they were afraid would never happen. There was always laughter, but beneath it was something quieter. Rowan noticed the little things. Maren always remembered when someone was having a difficult day. She would leave a cup of tea beside the tired cashier without saying anything. She would help children find books even when the store was crowded. She once spent nearly an hour helping an elderly customer find a novel he remembered only by its blue cover. Rowan watched her that afternoon and realized that her kindness wasn't something she performed for attention. It was simply part of who she was. Maren noticed things about Rowan too. She knew he had been struggling since his father lost his job and the family's finances became uncertain. She never embarrassed him by asking too many questions. Instead, she quietly found ways to make difficult days easier. When Rowan missed a weekend shift because he had to help his family, Maren covered for him without making a big deal of it. When he apologized, she simply told him that people mattered more than schedules. Their friendship became the safest part of both their weeks. Yet neither of them said what they were feeling. Months passed. Their friends began noticing the obvious. Whenever Rowan entered a room, Maren's expression changed. Whenever Maren laughed, Rowan looked for her before he realized he was doing it. They exchanged playful messages, shared inside jokes, and occasionally sat together after closing time while the last sunlight disappeared through the bookstore windows. Still, Rowan held back. He was afraid that if he admitted how he felt, everything would change. What if Maren didn't feel the same? What if he misunderstood every smile, every glance, every moment? More importantly, what if his difficult circumstances made him unworthy of someone as bright as her? Maren had her own fears. She had spent years watching people leave whenever life became inconvenient. Her parents' marriage had fallen apart when she was younger, and she had learned not to depend too heavily on promises. Rowan's quiet kindness made her trust him, but his hesitation sometimes made her wonder whether she had imagined their connection. Then came the day of the big stadium event. The bookstore had won tickets through a local community program, and several volunteers were invited to attend. Rowan and Maren ended up sitting beside each other in the afternoon sun. The stadium was alive with noise, flags, laughter, and thousands of people enjoying the day. Rowan carried 2 drinks, and Maren kept making fun of him for being nervous about spilling them. For a while, everything felt easy. Then Rowan received a phone call from home. His expression changed immediately. The conversation was short, but Maren knew something was wrong. His family had received difficult news about their finances, and Rowan suddenly felt guilty for being there instead of helping at home. Maren didn't tell him that everything would be fine. She knew empty promises weren't what he needed. Instead, she reminded him that he was allowed to have one afternoon where he wasn't carrying the entire world on his shoulders. Her words stayed with him. As the afternoon continued, Rowan slowly relaxed. He looked around at the people laughing, at the bright sky above them, and finally at Maren. He realized that he had spent months waiting for life to become perfect before allowing himself to be happy. Life wasn't going to become perfect. Maybe nobody's life ever did. Maren caught him staring. For a moment, neither looked away. She smiled nervously, then leaned slightly closer and whispered the question that changed everything. "Are you ever going to kiss me?" Rowan's heart raced. But instead of rushing into the moment, he understood something important. The months they had spent building trust mattered more than a single dramatic gesture. He smiled and told her that he had been afraid of ruining the friendship that meant so much to him. Maren admitted that she had been afraid too. They both laughed, almost relieved that the secret was finally out in the open. Rowan gently asked whether she was sure she wanted him to take that step. Maren smiled and nodded. The moment that followed was brief and innocent, more meaningful because it wasn't perfect. There were people cheering around them, music playing somewhere in the distance, and sunlight falling across the seats. Yet neither of them cared about any of it. What mattered was that they had finally stopped pretending. Afterward, they didn't suddenly have all the answers. Rowan still had problems waiting at home. Maren still carried old fears. Their future was still uncertain. But something had changed. They no longer had to wonder whether they were alone in facing those challenges. Over the following weeks, Rowan began making practical changes in his life. He found additional work, accepted help from people who cared about him, and stopped believing that asking for support was a weakness. Maren continued pursuing her own goals instead of making Rowan the center of her world. Their relationship grew not through grand gestures, but through patience, honesty, and the simple decision to show up for each other. Months later, Rowan returned to the bookstore where they had first met. The afternoon was quiet, and sunlight streamed through the windows. He saw Maren standing in the same aisle where they had once dropped those books. She looked at him and smiled. For a moment, Rowan remembered the frightened version of himself who had believed he needed to have everything figured out before he deserved happiness. He finally understood how wrong he had been. Sometimes life doesn't wait until you're ready. Sometimes the person who changes your life doesn't arrive with a dramatic entrance. Sometimes they simply drop a stack of books, make you laugh, remember your difficult days, and quietly teach you that being cared for doesn't make you weak. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop hiding behind fear and finally admit that someone matters to you. If this story touched your heart, please support the video with a like, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Dot. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need a little hope today. And before the story ends, special request, comment one word in the comments, kindness, if you believe that genuine care, patience, and honesty can bring light into someone's darkest days. Because sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives don't begin when everything is perfect. They begin when two people finally find the courage to stop pretending they don't care.